So Circa is a news company that was sort of the first to focus on this new idea that people were leading much more mobile lives. And I had this epiphany right at the beginning of 2012. I was in a coffee shop. I was waiting for some coffee, and I was trying to read a handful of these articles, trying to catch up on the news in the day. And I sort of realized, like, okay, our whole mode of consumption of news has completely changed. That it used to be 40 minutes with your cup of coffee sitting in front of a newspaper and being able to get through sort of all of the news of the day, and has now shifted to the 3 minutes that you've got while standing in line for the coffee. And in realizing that moment, I thought that this is like definitely the wrong way of doing things, that this is going to be more the norm. People are going to be more busy, more on the go. And someone needed to rethink dramatically how news got delivered. And so we created an experience where it was much more pared down, not removing details, not trying to summarize, but instead do something that we call atomization, which is to break down stories into their core elements, the facts that you need, the Cliffs Notes, if you will. And then we created this sort of new interaction that we just simply called follow, where you tap follow, and anything that happens to that story from then on, you continually get updates on. So it's this really intimate way of staying in touch with the things that you care about, and it's built for the phone first. And the distinction that I'll make between mobile first and what everybody else had done prior to us is that in news, and news is the perfect example of this, you had an environment where the writers think, I'm going to produce this piece for print and web, and then it's going to be sort of shoehorned into these mobile experiences, which are, then you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on an article. And that was the way that it was done. So there were mobile news apps, but none of them were mobile first.
And I remember Ben being really excited about it and being like, Hotel Tonight has reinvented hotel booking for the web. And OkCupid has kind of rejiggered their app solely for dating on the web. And Twitter has reworked social networks on mobile, but nobody had done it for news.
Right.
And you guys went to this basically interface that was fact, next fact, so you could glance at it, you knew exactly where to read, you wouldn't lose your spot, and everything was that singular atom that made up your whole story.
Yeah. And it was a different way of thinking about it, and it's something that, we've been at this for 2 years now, and I think just now we're seeing some other news organizations kind of pick up onto some of the ideas that we've developed, but the good part is that having done this now for 2 years, we've got 2 more years worth of ideas that we can, leapfrog and keep going on it. But it was an interesting trend to watch because, we jumped into this when nobody else was willing to. In fact, we had a lot of folks that told us early on that it would never work. We had people tell us that it was for sure the wrong way to go. And then, we saw validation earlier this year when New York Times launched their NYT Now app, which mimicked a lot of what we did in some different ways. As well as later on in the year, there was this innovation report that came out that was this internal report where they culled together all the things that they felt like they were doing wrong and they were doing well. And there we were listed as a competitor. I'm like, this is crazy. I had started this thing 2 years ago, and in 2 years' time, the pinnacle of journalism somehow thinks that we're a competitor, and we are. But it was just a very flattering thing to see. But I think what was interesting about us is happening in a lot of other places and a lot of other apps, and this is where we'll evolve the conversation, which is you look at what was previously a very stagnant industry, and you could put any industry in this box, and someone came up with a mobile alternative that just took off in a whole different way. You mentioned OkCupid. OkCupid was out there for however long. I mean, it's been, eight years now?
Ages.
Very long time. And Match and all these other things. And then Tinder comes along and wipes the page with them. Just out of way, way bigger numbers than all of the rest of them. And it was because it was an experience that was completely redefined for that phone. You look at hotel booking, an industry that there's no way that somebody would have thought that you would somehow book. First off, we moved from travel agents then to websites where you could kind of manage all this on your own, to a hyper optimized interface to find, I need this room tonight. and you could just list off all of them. Uber, I mean, all of these. Snapchat. You go from Facebook to the behemoth to Snapchat.
A lot of what it is sites are able to use the data that they've grabbed to figure out what you need right then. And so they're able to streamline it down, and they actually know what the use case is. Now, I'm also seeing this in hardware at Highway 1. None of my companies, I've had 35 companies go through there right now, start off with web. They all go with a mobile app that's going to connect to the device. It's how you configure it. It's how you interact with the app. If they're making web, it's for marketing. Usually their website is nothing but fluff and a sandwich video. And then they're planning on you downloading the app. Hopefully it has some sort of functionality that then upsells you to the hardware. So like Drop is a connected baking scale that that'll guide you through making muffins. And if your recipe calls for 3 eggs and you only have 2, it'll scale down all your other components, all based off the interaction with the scale. They don't even have a website that's associated with the scale. But the app serves up content from Tartine and from other bakeries. And so they're going for an app-based kind of kitchen experience.
That's really cool, actually.
That's pretty rocking.
I need more gadgets in my kitchen, really. The app world, though, is like rife with challenge. I will say that. With the web, you have the great massive amount of places that you can discover things, and things can take off in very different ways. Apps are a whole different challenge, and it's something that I've learned very acutely in my time working on Circa. Getting people to even know that you exist is a challenge. Like, for Circa, the first are all major versions prior to this one, and I'll explain that in a sec. All major versions prior to this one, it was a 5-star review. Like our 5-star average across thousands of ratings, which is a very rare thing to get. But our users loved it so much. But if they could just tell everyone, then maybe we'd have like a crazy scale. But the reality is, like, this is a hard-fought game. Getting people to install your app is no joke. I just recently, fixed up my phone, like had to wipe everything, install everything again. I reinstalled 155 apps. And I'm
Jesus.
like, I don't know what percentage of that I use on a daily basis, maybe 10% at best. And even then, I'm a unique case. And so the mobile-first world, while it is inevitable and it will be the only way that things go from here on out, is in and of itself a challenge because there is a limited attention span. So you have to do something very good for someone in a very short period of time. You have to delight them. You have to make them happy. And you have to do so in a way that is not obstructive to their experience.
So do you think it becomes like a winner takes all in mobile, and that's why New York Times is afraid of you? Because they know that if you have the New York Times app and you have Circa app, only one will be on the home screen, and only one can be open at once.
I think this is why you're finding like a bifurcation of apps, like why Facebook is separating the Messenger app from the core Facebook experience. And it's because they realize that maybe people are using Snapchat as their primary social network now and not Facebook anymore. But they know that their graph still exists and it still has immense value. So why not focus on that and get that app out there and don't clutter the rest of your experience? I think this is just the beginning of a time when companies will split up the majority of their apps into these different experiences. You saw it with Foursquare and Swarm.
Yep.
You've seen it with Path and Talk. It's going to continue to happen, and it's because I think finding a more minimal experience is the right way to go, not this bloat that we were previously putting on the phones. I mean, for the first probably 3 or 4 years of app development, we're simply translating web experiences into a smaller screen, which was 100% the wrong way of doing it. That's why you reached the news apps that existed prior to Circa. When we came at this, we're like, okay, forget everything we know prior to this. There are no sacred cows. Let's figure out the right way to do this for this environment and only this environment. So there's definitely a lot of trade-offs and a lot of things that have to happen there. And the one thing that I will say is the web is still an incredibly important discovery mechanism. Like, people still browse a lot. And frankly, someone doesn't just immediately go, oh, I see this experience, I absolutely need that app. Sometimes they have to be convinced of it. Sometimes they have to be explain a little bit more. And in our case, whereas we were mobile first and we will continue to be mobile first, we will be developing a more robust web experience because of that discovery piece.
So what is the web experience right now, and how is it different post-mobile than if you had, say, launched Circa Web in 2009 or something?
Yeah. we have always had these sort of permalink pages where someone can share a story from Circa and then to all of their friends, and then they can get that story outside of the Circa web experience, or sorry, the Circa mobile experience. And that's been like that since day one. Where we go from here is we add back in the discovery. So the list of stories, like we've been running a news company for 2 years without a list of stories online. And people follow our Twitter feed and stuff like that to be able to get those things. But for the most part, it worked pretty well on its own. Now we're ready to dig into this whole discovery experience online, because we realize that this isn't just about having the phone on your app. This mobile mentality extended to more than just the device. And that, if somebody's sitting there at lunchtime and wants to be able to catch up on news, just because they're in front of a computer and have a bigger screen doesn't mean they shouldn't have this same experience. And so, we are translating our experience onto a desktop, but it's not losing its core focus. It's not losing sight of what the unique bits of what we brought to news were with the app. The flip side of that, though, is had we gone the other route, I don't know that we would have made the same conclusion. And I'm glad that we did it that way, because I think that we might have created more succinct stories and things like that. And we might have tried to nail out a handful of those features, but I'm not convinced at all that we would have made it to a lot of the sort of really key takeaway revolutionary things that we've done with Circa if we would have started on the web first.
Well, I think it's those bite-sized things that are going to prepare you for actually even post-mobile, because I'm thinking, two of my companies and then Apple Watch are all about extending the screen. So Ringly is a Bluetooth connected ring that lets you filter your notifications. So you're not grabbing at your phone every time a tweet comes through, but instead you're only notified when it's an important phone call from your work or spouse or your kids. And then NavD is a heads-up display for cars that, again, is going to filter so that when you're driving, and everybody, or at least a lot of people, look at their phones while they're driving, but at least this will help make it safer by putting the map up in front of you so you don't take your eyes off the road. But they're going to filter exactly what is on there. And you guys are actually prepared for that, because you'll be able to send small bits to the Apple Watch if you so choose.
Yeah, I mean, we've already started working on that with Android. We've been on Android Wear for a little while, kind of like secretly. We haven't done a big announcement around it or anything like that, because we think it's going to take some time to really get an optimal experience. But the handful of people out there that have like the Moto 360 watch and an Android are already getting that experience. And it's kind of amazing as it relates to the way that we handle news, because we have this follow feature where you can continually get updated over time. So we're seeing use cases where people are getting a breaking news alert from us, seeing it on their watch. They go, "Oh yeah, that's crazy, Ebola in Dallas," and then follow, and you forget about it. And then every time there's an update, you're just another ping, and it's like we're not trying to overwhelm people. We're doing our best to keep it really simplified and make sure people aren't getting fatigued by the notifications, which is an extension of this conversation, which is notifications. Like, we've now even gotten to the point where there are some applications out there that are notification only, Yo, and what's the one that Secret is? Ping. They have basically no Chrome. There is no app. It's just sending you notifications.
Well, it's an Administrata app.
Yes.
And then after that, it's all through notifications.
Yep.
Kind of like the way Doppler used to be with just email. And you didn't have to go to the app. It would alert you when something important was happening via
and it's
email.
Just simply simplifying down. Like, one of my favorites is Dark Sky. Does anybody know Dark Sky, the app? So it's pretty amazing for anybody that lives in a place that it might rain sometimes, which you might not. But what's cool is it lives in the background, and they have this amazing predictive algorithm to figure out when it's going to rain. And it'll send you a notification. It'll say in 5 minutes it's going to rain. Or it'll be like in 5 minutes light rain, or in 10 minutes heavy rain. And it feels like magic, because their algorithm is really remarkable, and they actually do a darn good job of actually giving you real information. But it feels like magic. You get this notification that it's going to rain, and as you're walking out, and you go, "Oh, okay, hang on, let me grab that."
I honestly could have used that at Burning Man this year. We got trapped in a thunderstorm, but
if you think about this concept of push versus pull, that somebody can just be delivered an experience as opposed to constantly needing to suck in this experience, it really does start to open up to a lot of different possibilities. There's an insane amount of apps out there. There's definitely going to be app fatigue around this stuff, but I think mobile first is is going to be the only way that we go from here on out.
Well, I think that there already is fatigue, and that's what you were saying. I mean, you downloaded 155 apps, and you probably only use 20 on a weekly basis.
Oh, I've probably downloaded well over 300 apps, but then I've pared down to ones that I know that are that some day provide me some use or value, and otherwise they just sit in a folder until at one point in time I go, oh yeah, that thing is there, and
I
it's
need
interesting.
space for the next Walking Dead
Yeah.
episode.
For the next Walking Dead episode? Yeah. No, that's why I got this like behemoth of a phone that now has like 128 gigs. This thing is more powerful than the computer that I bought when I went to college. It's insane.
Oh, yeah.
But, the key here, I think, is that this future is here and it is not going away. Like, we sat at lunch talking about mobile first, and we really, truly struggled to come up with a company that you would start today where you would not go down the mobile first path. And the examples that we gave are like, look at companies like Relate IQ, which built a CRM that is designed for a mobile environment, is built for an app experience, and then they get bought by Salesforce because Salesforce couldn't build that themselves. It had to be a totally new kind of and different experience. So we'll pull the
server management tools is what I came up with. If I was going to launch Chef today, I would still launch it web and command line first. But
Okay.
that is not consumer. So we wanted to put it to you. Can you think of anything that would launch web first?
Shout it out. What launches web first from we're at day one right now. From now on, what launches web first? Anything. I think we just proved the point.
Or even web at the same
Okay.
time?
My frustration with Circa is that it's not personal enough. And there are some things that you can't do on your phone to really tell it, what's going to help you out. It's not like Google Words, where you can put something very specific on there that I would really care about. Any notification, for example, anything that uses my company, my company name.
So Circa doesn't have Google Alerts.
So if it launches, what the web is useful for is for creating the interface with the person so that you can actually tell it what specifically you're looking for. You basically create the filter on the web. And then, everything can go. Everything else is mobile.
Well, so I don't know if I want to dig in on this because there's a lot. Let me
that's
see if I can get it
basically
down
a
to 60
back-end
seconds.
question.
So first off, we made very specific decisions in the development of Circa because we did not want to boil the ocean. We did not want all information. We wanted the most important and relevant information. And frankly, I have 11 people that work harder than most to be able to develop our news. We can't write everything. But what we do write, we write in an entirely new way that gives you the most personalized news experience, which is following a story. The Ebola story, the day that it hit Dallas, I started following that story. As a result of following that story, I'm now delivered every single thing that is happening inside of that story, not a topic, not saying I am interested in Ebola in general and therefore I want all Ebola news because that is Google Alerts. What we do is based on the story itself and the evolution of the things inside of that story. So I'm delivered every single little salient detail that happens inside of that story, and when I come back to that story, I see the things that I have not seen yet. I don't see any repetition. There's nothing that I've ever seen anywhere else. And therefore, it is literally personalized to me because Circa knows what I have and have not seen. And so, to us, that's the ultimate in personalization. I think what is mostly referred to is what Eli Parsier, who wrote the book The Filter Bubble, says is actually a bad thing, which is the more you try to customize and personalize an experience around you and only the things that you care about, you end up becoming a bad citizen. You become less informed because you're only delivered the things that you care about, and therefore you don't see anything else that grows you as a person. And so we made very specific design decisions to say, look, the things that you're interested in, we're going to get really granular with you, but we're also not going to cover everything. And so, sorry if that was a small tangent, but the bits that you talk about, which is being able to see everything, I think that could still very much be a mobile experience. Ping, this new app from Secret, you can basically punch in all the things that you want, and it just sends you notifications whenever things happen. I feel like that could for sure still be very much a mobile experience.
Yeah, I was just speaking in terms of interfaces. When it requires my input, it's easier to type on a laptop than it is, an if you're providing the intelligence, then really, everything is here.
And even that is changing because, for example, I'm doing most of my email now via voice dictation. Siri is in iOS 8 is so accurate that I'm able to type accurately at 180 words per minute. I've now tracked it. I've done all the tests and figured out that like very, very, very minor times where I've seen errors, 180 words per minute. So even your ability to type with 2 fingers, I was up to 80 words a minute on my own with just this thing. And then all of a sudden I started talking to it instead of typing. And yeah, you don't want to do that in a bar, and maybe you don't want to do that in certain environments. But if you're in the position where you can do that, there's no way I'm going to be sitting there typing out in an awkward way with my thumbs anymore. This is remarkable.
You must be really popular at work.
One of my favorite things to do, actually. I think the other thing about the phone, about mobile first, and about this environment that is remarkable is focus. On the web we have tabs, and I don't know how many tabs you have open on average, but
I probably have about 45 or 50 open
you
right now.
have way more
across
than
my
I do.
2
That
accounts.
is crazy. What are you doing?
I'm saving them for later, and for my flight later tonight.
Okay, sure. But the idea is you have all these tabs, you have all of these apps, you have all of this distraction. And I think the magic of this screen and this environment is you focus on a task at once and a task at hand. And so if I'm in the email app, I'm in the email app. And yeah, maybe it kind of sucks to pop out and sometimes in other ways. And I think that there's extensions that are going to make that a better experience. But what I love to do is put my headphones in, walk around my office, and just like bang out on email, right? If I've got an email inbox of 30 things sitting there, I'm able to get through everything because A, I have focus on whatever the task at hand is. B, I am more diligent in how I might address all of those things. But I really struggle to think of a company aside from, say, just a consumer experience that you would want to build outside of a mobile first experience now.
Anyone?
Any last ideas where we've got, 2.
Yeah, so I imagine it would have to be something where people are sitting on their computer a lot, so maybe like a call center, if you were trying to streamline a call center agent, but again, it's a reach.
Even then, that could be very easily mobile because they're usually served up what they're going to be dialing. And so you could easily page through the CMS or the customer records from that interface.
And
certainly the call interface would be easy.
I don't know if you've seen Pat's new Talk app, and it's got this kind of interesting feature where I can find a business and text that business. And it's not texting them. It is actually using a call center. Somebody is sitting there looking at your text and calling that business and then typing back out to you what that is. But that I could definitely see as something that would not have to be strictly a desktop experience. It might be more efficient for now on the desktop, but you wouldn't necessarily, and again, you recognize it's a stretch, right? So it's hard to think of anything that you might specifically do on desktop these days. Yeah.
I could be totally off base, but it seems like it might be kind of tough to watch something like Netflix mobile first, just due to the data constraints.
Actually, and interestingly enough, that's not quite the case anymore for a couple of reasons. One is the networking features on these phones are getting really robust and remarkable. The fact is now I'm able to get on LTE, for example, in San Francisco. A buddy of mine just got 60 megabits per second down, which is 3 times as fast as most conventional connections through the cable. What's that?
We're talking about caps and such that most people.
Data caps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also Wi-Fi personally, I bring my iPhone to my gym and then watch it on the treadmill
near
from
ubiquitous
Netflix.
Wi-Fi.
I've downloaded iTunes from there.
But video being an example, just for a quick second, you are seeing changes in the way that video gets done as a result of being on that environment. I mean, you have Vine versus YouTube, for example, where the creation of those Vine videos is a more restrictive thing, not unlike, say, Flickr being analogous to Instagram.
Hi. So you have this concept of reading time, like a 2-minute read or a 6-minute read. I just see it on your blog, for example. Do you think of maybe every piece should have an option of a 2-minute version versus 10-minute version? And that's kind of one part of the question. And the other is, what about you can have more images or less images? You can have a video instead of text. how are you thinking about that with Circa?
Well,
We have different styles of consuming, receiving, understanding information. So.
yeah, the remarkable thing about mobile is everybody is in a different environment whenever they're using this. And so it could be casually you're standing in front of the coffee line. It could be that you're, at a restaurant and somebody just went to the bathroom and you now have 3 minutes of glory to be able to figure out whatever's going on in the world. Or it could be that you're just sitting on the couch and you are going to sit there with, 60 minutes worth of something. I think that being able to adapt to those different environments is important and finding a way to do it. Do I think that it necessarily needs to go that way? No. I look at examples like Instagram where you see this constraint, and they've expressed constraint around their product, where you take one picture at a time, you adjust that one picture, and you upload that one picture. There isn't some sort of mass, I'm going to take a lot of albums and stuff like that. So you show a constraint there. And maybe people do want a deeper experience, and maybe you find a way to deliver that to them. But the base should be understanding that the person probably doesn't have time or attention. The average time spent in app, for example, in the news category is about 60 seconds.
Is that your purpose, to just have these short reads? Don't you think that after we read a 2-minute thing, we can maybe be interested in a 10-minute longer version of the story?
Absolutely. And so, providing that, the blog that you're reading is actually on Medium. So we use Medium to blog our stuff, and so that's not actually our app. The principles remain, where it's like, we want to get you something really.
And you guys link off the sources.
All the time. Yeah, there's lots of different ways to dig in deeper. And the thing is, it's all about delivering what somebody wants at that moment in time. And so, interestingly enough, as it relates to the follow bits, we had a lot of criticism early on that we were short, or that our goal was short, which is not true. Our goal was concise for the moment in time. And so when you read one of our pieces, it is telling you the story as it is in this moment and why it matters in this moment. But we have examples of stories that if you would have been following them and read it over time, we're talking 5,000 plus word pieces, that if you would actually reconstruct it through all the evolutions of that story, you would end up with something very long. But it is about reaching the user in those moments in time as opposed to one block of time, for example.
And it's also fact versus opinion versus a story.
Yeah. So,
anyone else?
I think, the U.S. in general actually is still probably one of the more PC, I guess, and web-friendly countries in the world. So I guess, wondering, I know my company, we've actually had an opportunity to explore some opportunities in Nigeria, and we could be making 10 times the revenue in the next year in Africa, which is an extremely emerging market, and they're literally mobile only.
Yeah.
So how much does, I guess, a lot of these countries, these emerging markets, being, pretty much mobile only or right to mobile, influencing of your decision-making process, or of your ideologies towards mobile?
well, ideology, certainly. What we do as a company, it's going to be a non-starter for us because we're primarily a U.S. news, company. So I'll separate Circa from everything else like that. The stuff going on in Africa and other developing nations is nothing short of absolutely fascinating. They have, for those of you that maybe haven't really dug in on that environment, they've literally skipped the computer. Like, this computer was never even a part of their world, and they went right to these phones where they're still
Well, it
crap
used to be
phones.
just text interfaces. And now it's switching. Like, now there's the $80 Android phone that came out a couple of years ago, and Android Zero, which is dropping the price. But I mean, I remember back at Microsoft working on, they had projects where farmers in India would text to get crop prices. And those were the interfaces they were working on. And Nathan Eagle out of MIT developed actually kind of a mechanical Turk version that could be used in developing world or emerging markets. Yeah. And that's how Nokia did a lot of the translation for their interfaces, was through workers via text.
It's an amazing world because you now have an environment where they're not even there's not debit cards, there's not cash. They're getting loans directly through their phones. It's really remarkable, but I think that there is certainly an emerging market there. We're talking about two very different things, though, because I think that the U.S. and a lot of the people that make apps here are so insular, and I'm certainly guilty of that, of only thinking the way that we consume and the way that we think. That if anybody's really intrigued by this, they should spend some time in those places. I personally have not, but I've heard remarkable things from Ted Reingold at InVenture, who's doing these rapid loans via mobile devices for people that, for instance, need to buy a goat. All right. And it's remarkable what's going on there. And I think that will begin to really inform the rest of the world, because here you have people that never even experienced computers, and you have technology being delivered to those areas that is remarkable. Facebook, was it Facebook or Google that did the drone purchase? It was Facebook,
It was
right?
Facebook. Google has the balloons.
So Google has balloons that will go up in the sky and broadcast down Wi-Fi.
There's something like 1,000 of them in the air right now. Google
And
Loon.
Facebook bought a low-flying, slow drone company to fly over these areas and deliver internet. So we're now past cellular towers. Like, we're past almost all of the conventional ways of even delivering data. It's that crazy how fast things are shaping up there. But I think that if there's any indication that as an entire society we're going to move towards a mobile first and likely mobile only world, there it is. Like, I do have this one weird thing, and if somebody in this room is crazy enough to go build this thing, this would be cool, but I have this belief that eventually these will not even be our devices, that rather it will be a watch, and that's where all the computing is going to be done, and this is just dumb glass. Like, that this thing computes with this, which means that I could walk up to a screen and therefore there's all my experience, or I could walk up to this and have
Well, I think this is going to be your connection, and the computing is going to be done in the big brain.
Yes, in the cloud.
I think yeah. But this is your identity, your pay, and minor amount of computing that feeds
Period.
to whatever screen you're looking at.
I think the Apple Watch is fascinating, and so if you're thinking mobile first, there's probably even going to be companies that are built on wearable first from here on out.
That will definitely happen in the next year.
Yeah, we got about
Once
5
that's
minutes
actually out
left.
there.
We got other questions?
The other thing
We're on like
wondering
tangents here.
is so we both had smartphones back in 2004, so we're going on a decade of smartphones. I had a Danger Hip Top Sidekick 2, the color one.
Nokia 3600.
And so I used to be in conversations, and I'd flip open the screen and real quick tap out an email to friends, which would blow their minds. Andy Rubin went on later to found Android.
Who had a smartphone in 2004?
2005?
And because I already know the answer to this question, I'll ask it the other way, which is, who in this room does not own a smartphone? No one? Can somebody confirm? It's hard to see. You don't? You don't own a smartphone. What do you own? You own a flip phone?
A free phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I broke mine, and that's where I'm at.
Well, and see, it's a
Oh,
matter
so you
of
broke
like,
your smartphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
you'd be back to it though. And so it's definitely a brave new world, and there's no stopping this. It was funny to start a company 2 years ago that was based on phones that not everybody, it wasn't that ubiquitous, and now it is.